Hi everyone, welcome to Make Moments Matter, a music education podcast, where I share lesson ideas, songs, games, and inspiring things for your elementary music classroom. My name is David Rao, and I am the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. This episode of the podcast is a replay containing the audio version of a Musical Mondays live video. If you're not familiar with Musical Mondays, every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I go live on Facebook and Instagram to share about the lessons that I'm using in class with my students. I give a recap of my kindergarten through 5th grade lessons, and then do a deep dive about one grade level and share the books, instruments, songs, and process that I use to teach the lesson to kids. This podcast episode contains all the audio from the Musical Mondays video, but if you'd like to see a replay of the video itself, you can find a link to the archived video on YouTube when you click the link in the notes for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here's the show.
Hey everyone, my name is David Rao, and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Patreon, on Pinterest, on Facebook, Instagram, a variety of places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. Today I'm going to be talking about non-pitched percussion instruments, so like wood blocks, go-go bells, claves, castanets, things like that, how to incorporate them in your classroom a little bit more often, and some ideas about how to rotate, how to switch, how to get kids to choose instruments, and how to do that without losing your mind. So that's coming up in just a second. If you hear any links or ideas or things in this video that you're interested in, you want to learn more, I have a whole page on my blog dedicated to those links and things that I talk about. I call it the links page. You can go to my blog, makemomentsmatter.org, and click the video tab, or just wherever you're watching, listening to this video or this podcast, you should be able to just click the link in the description. It should take you straight there. If you don't want to see me through a screen, if you'd be interested in like seeing me on like in person, I'm doing a workshop in Forney, Texas on April 26th. That's a week from Saturday. It's free thanks to Forney Independent School District and West Music. And so you can sign up for that. There's a link on the links page, but please come and be a part of that if you're interested. Also this summer, I'm teaching levels in a couple of places. I'm teaching ORF Level 1 in Orlando with the Central Florida ORF chapter. There are like maybe a couple of spots in Level 1 still open, and I know there are spots in Level 2 with the amazing Billy Ferguson if you're interested in Level 2 there. I'm also teaching Level 2 in St. Louis, the University of Missouri St. Louis, and I think there are spots for Level 2, and I'm pretty sure there are spots for Level 1 with Jason Glasshauser if you're interested in that. So if you're thinking about ORF levels this summer, come join me. It'd be so much fun. Or come to my course, the course that I'm teaching at, or any course. Go to a course. It's absolutely worth your time. You should check it out. Okay, that's all the housekeeping stuff. So let's talk about instruments. So why am I talking about non-pitched instruments today? Well, I always think like when I'm planning for lessons, I always think like I do this all the time. I do non-pitched instruments all the time. Why? I don't need to be as like specific and what's the word I want? Intentional about it, incorporating them, because I use them all the time. And I do use them all the time. And I think about lessons where like it just incorporates in with a book or a story or something. It's not always the focus of the lesson, but like it's, part of the orchestration or something. They're non-pitched instruments all the time, I think. But I think it's one of those times where like you maybe see it more or it's more obvious to you because you see the grand scheme and you like teach a lesson 4 times before you get to move on. So like it's one of those things where I think like, oh yeah, well I do that all the time. But what sometimes is happening for me is I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it all the time in like K1 and 2, but it doesn't always show up in 3, 4, and 5, or just as often. Or maybe I do it all the time, except I just got off a program cycle and they hadn't really been playing instruments for that whole cycle because they're doing other stuff. Or, yeah, you might be doing non-pitched instruments, but it doesn't hurt to just bring them in more often and think about ways that you can incorporate them in smart, thoughtful ways and incorporate them just more often. So today I want to talk about like how can you integrate them quickly? How can you get instruments out quickly? How can you rotate with instruments? Some thoughts about teaching kids on how to choose instruments, all in just a couple lessons that I do with different grades but I've been doing recently, and thoughts about how you can include them just in short little snippets. So, okay, so yes, you should include non-pitched instruments when you're doing like, a book that includes them, or an orchestration that has a non-pitched percussion line or something like that. Include them on all sorts of things. But there are also little times where you can just boom, take 5 minutes and pull out instruments to reinforce something you're already doing. So for example, in kindergarten, I've been doing Jack Be Nimble, and I have a whole video if you want to see like a long drawn out process on like, how do I teach that full lesson from start to finish. For me, it starts with the words. Then we do body percussion, so patting, clapping, snapping, stuff like that. And eventually it moves to a pitched instrument, like a xylophone. Sometimes I do this non-pitched step. I did this year. And sometimes I don't. It just sort of depends. But if you want to hear more about that specific lesson, I have a whole video all about that, which you can watch, that I recorded a couple years ago. Okay, so when I do Jack Be Nimble, for me it works out like this. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Jack jumped over the candlestick. Jack jumped high, Jack jumped low, Jack jumped over and burned his toe. Ouch! And we make a little X at the end for like an ouch. Now with my students, with my kinders, this is what I've been doing with them. We start out, and when we learn the poem, we speak through the poem. It's a story, and you can see all sort of the steps that I take on that. But when we do the poem, I have them, the first part we just do a steady beat. So Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jumped over the candlestick. That whole little, like first half is all just with a steady beat. Then after Jack jumped high, Jack jumped high. So bump, 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 right after Jack jumped high. And then low, Jack jumped low. Jack jumped over and burned his toe. And you can do a clap at the end. You can do an X at the end. It sort of depends on what you want to do. For me and my progression, I learn the text. We learn the text. We speak it in rhythm. We add the steady beat. We add the claps, we add the other stuff. And then usually the first instrument that I pull out is rhythm sticks. I do a whole thing with rhythm sticks. We explore them, we try them in different ways. Clicking in different places on the sticks, clicking high, clicking low, clicking them together, patting them on the floor, all sorts of stuff. And that's in that video, that progression of how I do that. This year, I had in my lesson that I was going to do a pitched instrument. And I was like, well, why don't I do non-pitched? Because with my kindergarten, what we had just done, in the previous lesson, talked about scrapers and shakers, and we had incorporated them and tried them. And one of the things with scrapers and shakers was we tried out scrapers and shakers with Jack Be Nimble. Some of them worked great, some did not. And so in this lesson, I was like, why don't we try that with woods and metals? Because it was in my lesson plans to talk about woods and metals and compare and contrast. And so before students ever got them out, we re-spoke the poem, we did it with body percussion, we went through the process again, a steady beat to begin, and then those Jack jumped high, those little rhythms that you interject. So then I went over to my non-pitched instruments, and I have like a tray of them tonight. But in my classroom, I have a bunch of drawers, and on the front is a label with the name of the instrument and a picture. And so I went through the drawers and I said, okay, all of these green labeled drawers, these are all metal instruments. Last week we played the pink labels. Those are shakers and scrapers. And you have to figure out, is it a scraper, is it a shaker? But the metals, they're all different. And I'm going to pull out a couple, and some of them work really well for Jack Be Nimble. Like, let me try this go-go bell, right? So this go-go bell. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Jack jumped over the candlestick. Jack jumped high. Jack jumped low. Jack jumped over and burned his toe. Ouch. Okay, and this one is actually fun because, like, look, there are two bells. So Jack jumped high. Jack jumped low. That's kind of fun, right? But it's a pretty good instrument for Jack Be Nimble. Okay, let me see if I can find another metal instrument. And again, I would just open drawers and pull out different things. Ooh, how about this cowbell? The cowbell, that'd be fun. So I try it with cowbell, right? And it works just fine. Okay, let's see. Ooh, and then I pull out some fun things. What are these? Oh, they're railroad spikes? These just look like big nails. These are instruments? Can I really use them as an instrument? Let me try. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Jack jumped over the candlestick. Jack jumped high. Jack jumped low. Jack jumped over and burned his toe. Oh, that's fun at the end. You can make that X. That's really fun. Okay, if you don't have railroad spikes, I don't buy them from a catalog. I have sourced them from people. I have said to them, like, hey, does anyone have, this is random, please don't go pull them out of a railroad somewhere, but does anybody have railroad spike? Like I ask around and I've found a bunch. And they make a really fun sound, and they are not abrasive or hard or anything. They're not hard for kids. They're actually a nice weight for kids to hold. Okay, so then I say, okay, great, but let me try another metal and see what that's like. Oh, the finger cymbals. Okay, and remember, finger cymbals, you have to let them dangle to make sound. I know in the videos and the movies people do like the smashing, but I don't think that makes a very nice sound. So with finger cymbals, I like to go, I let them dangle and I go, oh, ooh, oh, ooh. They make this beautiful sound. And for some kids, that's really tricky to do two dangling. So for some kids, I'll have them hold one as a striker and tap the other one. And that works just great. So with these kids, I say, let's try it with the finger cymbals. Jack, be nimble, Jack, be quick. Jack jumped over the candlestick. Jack jumped. Shh, shh, shh. They're not being quiet. They're supposed to be quiet right now. Shh. How can I get them to be quiet? And then we play around, we try, oh, if I touch it, it stops. Oh, that works. And this is another thing where, like, if I'm dangling and I go like, oh no, they're broken. Why are they broken? Well, if you're holding the metal, they don't make that beautiful, the ringing sound. They just sound like click, click, click. Okay, so Jack jumped high. Jack jumped, stop, you need to stop. Jack jumped high. They keep ringing. They keep ringing when I'm trying to talk. Jack jumped high. Jack jumped low. I either have to get used to the ringing or I have to stop them from ringing in between so they don't. And then I do the same thing with the triangle. It's the same sort of process. Talking through with kids before I have them choose. Okay, now let's look at some wood instruments. Ooh, the tone block. I love a tone block. Okay, this one is kind of probably like the agogo bell because it has a big and a small. Jack, be nimble, Jack, be quick. Jack jumped over the candlestick. Jack jumped high. Jack jumped low. Jack jumped over and burned his toe. Ooh, that's fun. Okay, I love the tone block. Okay, let's see. Ooh, the cocorico. Some people call this a clatterpillar. I like either word. Okay, Jack, be nimble, Jack, be quick. Jack jumped over the candlestick. That's great if you can get good control of it. But a lot of times it just sounds like this. Jack, be nimble, Jack, be quick. Jack, can you hear the steady beat in that? Because I can't really hear it. Jack, be nimble, Jack, be quick. Jack, you really have to be quick with it. You can get it, but it's kind of hard to control. Maybe not the best for the steady beat. Jack jumped high. Jack jumped low. Okay, again, can a kindergartner get that rhythm with this action? Probably not on beat. So with that one, I'm like, I don't know if that's a very good choice. Here's another fun example. It's fun, the slapstick. I had not considered what this is doing to the microphone. I hope that you all can hear this and are not blasted out. I'm really sorry if this is too much down. Okay, so this is another fun where it's fun to slap it to get that sound, but maybe not the best work. So another way you can play is to hold this and like move it like that. But it's like, really, I don't want to pinch my fingers, so I kind of have to like hold back and let go. It's not really good for a steady beat because I have to like repeat it. Jack, be nimble, Jack, be quick. Jack jumped over the candlestick. And to be able to like not pinch my fingers and get to use it over and over, this just does not feel like a very good instrument for that. Jack jumped high. That didn't really work. Okay, I think I would not use this instrument. It is fun and it is super like, we should play it sometimes, but it's not really good for this poem, I don't think, because it's hard to control. Okay, let me try another one. Ooh, the claves. These are fun, and mine has this fun little thing called the clave companion on it. I forgot to put this on the links page, but I will. If you're going to get these out of this drawer, I say to my kids, you need to have one with this little thing and one without. And for me, it makes me think of a hot dog. And if this were a hot dog, this would be the hot dog. This part would be the... And then like the bun. And it's like, yep. So you hold the hot dog by the bun. You don't hold the hot dog. That'd be kind of odd. And you get a tap. Now, if you were to hold the hot dog by the hot dog, it doesn't sound as good. But if you hold by the bun, you get a good sound. Can we do the steady beat for this? Jack, be nimble, Jack, be quick. Jack jumped over the candlestick. Jack jumped high. Jack jumped low. Jack jumped over and burned his toe. Ooh, that's great. Okay, so when I go through with kids, we talk through some of that. And for some kids, that lands. And for some kids, that is great, helpful feedback. And for other kids, they're like, stop talking, I want to get to playing. Okay, so for some kids, they go right to it, which is great. And then what I do with kindergarten is I say, okay, I go and tap like 4 or 5 kids. You all can go get an instrument from one of the green drawers. So I don't care which one, but you're limited to green. And remember the ones that we said were like maybe not so good for this poem. You could try it, but I don't think it'd maybe be so good or whatever. So we talk through and they get to try that. And then other kids I send to the yellow drawers. That does help with classroom management too. They're not fighting over so many. They don't have so many choices, so it's easier for them to choose quickly. And then I find when I send kids in to get a new instrument, it like pushes the first set of kids out because they want to like grab and go. And so then eventually we rotate in so all kids have an instrument. Does it get a little loud? Yes. Does loud mean off task? No. Just means loud. And then sometimes we'll say, ooh, we're going to do Jack Be Nimble, we're going to do the lullaby version. Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Good. Some of these instruments can get quiet easily, some cannot. Or like we play around with like which ones ring, because some metals ring and some metals don't. And so it's fun to get to talk through some of that and show them some versatility of those instruments they can explore and try it in sort of a silly way. What I found with my kindergarten is I need to give them a little bit of exploring time before I ask them to do the poem. And then I need to give them some more exploring time after, because to have them just go, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jumped over the candlestick, Jack jumped high, Jack jumped low, Jack jumped over and burned his toe. I'm done. I never need to touch this instrument again. No, they're like, we just got started. So with kids, I usually give them a little bit of exploring time before and a little bit of time after, and we usually repeat the poem twice. And then we'll probably rotate. With kinder, it's fun to have them sit in a circle because then they can just rotate over one and get a new instrument. And if you've had them mix up enough with like woods and metals, then if they rotate once, then usually they could switch from either one kind of wood to a different kind of wood or wood to a metal. So if you have them get enough variety and you encourage enough variety, they'll go from like a clave to an agogo bell, and a go-go bell to a wood block or whatever, and they'll go and they'll get some good variety. We don't always rotate all the way through because there's only so much time, and I'm not budgeting my whole lesson for this, but it does give them some good variety. And my favorite part is at the end, I say, okay, now you didn't get this instrument out, but you need to figure out how to put it away. First thing you need to figure out what the instrument you're currently holding, because they've rotated several times. Is it a wood or is it a metal? So you need to figure that out first. And remember, the metals go in the green drawers and the woods go in the yellow drawers. You get to go find the drawer that matches that as a picture of your instrument, and then they go put away. So it's just one way to sort of cycle that in and use it more often, and then they're getting a little bit more variety. Okay, example is second grade. Second grade, I did not have in my lessons to do woods and metals or any non-pitch instruments, but I did have it in my lessons to do rhythm reading, and they were kind of bored with it. And also, they had not played in a while. I look back at the lessons and I was like, we've done some singing games, we did pitch instruments, we did some drumming stuff, but they haven't played these non-pitch in a while, and they just did a program too. So it's been quite a while, so I really do want to cycle this back in. We had just learned half rest. So by now we knew quarter note, quarter rest, eighth notes, half note, and now half rest. And so with that, I was like, ooh, there's a perfect chance to go and do some rhythm reading and incorporate instruments. So again, we went through, I had like 4 lines of rhythms on the board. It was about 8 measures. The first line was like all quarter notes and all eighth notes and quarter notes. Easy. The second line had a half note or something thrown in and maybe a quarter rest. The next line had a half note, a rest, all different variety. And then there was also a half rest in there. So we went through, we read it just with rhythm syllables, tas and tadis and, whatever. And then, or tas and tts, whatever you say at your school. And then after we'd done that with just rhythm syllables, then we went through and we clapped it or we patted it. We did body percussion mix. Once we had done that, I said, you know what, we should get out some instruments. Let's just look and see what we have right here. And again, I focused on woods and metals because I wanted them to explore that. Especially because of that half rest. So I went through again and gave a very similar spiel that I had already given on this video, so you could sort of go back if you want to see it. But the spiel I gave to my kindergartners, I gave sort of that same idea of like, what is this? How do you hold it? Would it be good? Would it not be good? Let me try and read a little bit with it. So again, I would like ta-dee, 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 ta, ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta. Would that be good for this instrument? Yeah, this one's easy to do that. Okay, how about the half note? Ta. Well, I can do the hand wave so we know it's a half note, but it doesn't really make a half note sound. Ta, ta. It's really only like a ta. It only does like a quarter note. But if we do that wave, we know that it's a half note. Okay. All right, well, let's try. Ooh, also, I love with the tone block, I say like, okay, it has these ridges that could maybe be scratched, but it's not in a drawer with the scrapers and shakers. It's in a wood drawer. It's not in a scraper drawer. So then do you think that it's meant to be a scraper? Like it could be a scraper. Is it meant to be a scraper? And so we like play around and talk about that. I don't know, you could scrape it, but for me, this is a tapping instrument, but okay. So we go through and then I talk again about, would it be appropriate to do this with the rhythm up there? Think about clapping it, think about tapping it. And a couple instruments that I point out, triangle is a great example. Is it good for the quarter notes and eighth notes? Ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta, 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 ta-dee, ta. I'm done, but it's still, hold on, it's still going. Still going. Still going. Okay, here's what I think. I don't think it's very good for a quarter note. That's way longer than a quarter note. A quarter note should be like ta. And it keeps going. Is there a note that it could be good for? And they're like, half note. Yeah, it could. Ta. But even that, it's actually longer than a half note. So like, what do we have to do to get it to stop? And then we talk about, holding it, tapping it, holding it to our chest, something like that, to get it to stop. Ta. So it's fun to talk about which instruments ring longer and why is that a benefit if you're doing certain notes. Why is it bad if you're doing other things? Like if a quarter note comes along, ta, your instrument's still playing. It gets them to think about what is playing, because some kids think that the second they tap it, that is playing it. And they don't think about that it's still making a sound. Like metallophones, triangles, finger cymbals, they don't think that it's still sending out that sound. They hear it, but they don't always process that. So it's sometimes fun to talk about like what would be good for a different kind of note. Another example is the slapstick. When I do the slapstick, I say, is it very good for this rhythm? And they're like, no, because it's short and repeated. It is a fun sound. What if we only played it on this spot, this spot, this spot? Yes, it'd be perfect to accent things. But is it good for like long rhythms? Not unless you want pinched fingers, right? Another instrument that I love is this instrument called the stir xylophone. I love this instrument. It is so much fun. It is not really good for reading rhythms because you could do like ta-dee ta, ta-dee ta, 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 ta-dee ta, and just tap on the side. But it's not called the tap xylophone. It's called the stir xylophone. You're supposed to stir. And I play that and they're like, that sound is amazing. Yes, it is amazing, but is it very good for tas and toddies? No. Ta-dee ta, ta-dee ta, 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 ta-dee ta, ta. Maybe for a half note, maybe. But for hearing clean rhythms, it's not very good. It just doesn't make it's tricky. It's not a very good sound. So it's fun to talk through some of the pros and cons of instruments. Why would you maybe use them? Why would you maybe not? With an older grade, because they start to understand more and see like the value of like why you would choose one over another. It's really great to do stuff like this now, because then when you're asking them to make informed choices later, they have some of that prior knowledge, they have the experience, and know a little bit more when you're asking them to make a choice about, okay, in this orchestration, what should we use? It gives them a little bit more context. How do I rotate with these kiddos? So I have them in 4 groups on 4 different lines. I've talked about this in another video about like my family groups, but they're just basically teams. So each team, I use woods and metals. So like 2 of the teams get woods, 2 of the teams get metals. So you get to go choose your instrument like before. There are better or less better choices. They're good or less good choices depending on what you want to do. Do you want to have an instrument that sustains longer? Do you want to have an instrument that is easier to hold? The triangle's fun, but it moves around. Like you got to make a choice about what you play here. So they go up and they choose, they play their thing, and then before we switch from a metal to a wood, I say, if you're a metal, I need you to switch with another metal. If you're a wood, I need you to switch with another wood. So they get one switch. We do our rhythms, we read through, we try again. Then I say, okay, now if you're a wood, stay seated. If you're a metal, stand up. Okay, metals, if you're standing, go over to a wood and switch with them and then go back to your seat. So then they switch woods and metals and we play. And then I have, again, switch within your group. So if you're a wood, switch with a wood. If you're a metal, switch with a metal. So by the time we're done with this activity, which takes maybe, 10 minutes, maybe, they have played 4 different instruments. We've talked about timbre choice. We've talked about appropriateness choice for an instrument. Yes, it's fun. Does it fit with the assignment right now? Maybe, maybe not. Some of these fun instruments would be great for later when we're going to do a book and we need an explosion sound, or we need an emphasis, or we need a surprise, or we need something. Catalog these and remember some of these for later, but maybe they're not so good for rhythm reading, right? Which is why sometimes when we do rhythm reading, I just hand out rhythm sticks because that's easy and works for a lot of stuff. But today you're going to get to choose, So having these exploratory moments before you ever ask kids to use it for rhythms to talk through some of this, it's really, really beneficial and helps them with their choices later. Okay, this was just a quick, how can you incorporate, like I said, with Jack Be Nimble and with this 2nd grade lesson with just rhythm reading, it doesn't take a long part of my lesson, but I know that they remember it and I know that it's valuable for them and I know it's fun for them, and it also informs what we do later. So when I'm asking them to play again later, now they have more experience, they're better at it, and it's fun. They like it. It gives a breakup in the lesson because they're getting up to get an instrument. They're getting up to put one away. There's movement. There's, it feels like a refresh in the lesson, even if I'm we're just really reading rhythms that are grade level appropriate. Cool. But guess what? I can have this same 2nd grade lesson when we come back in 3rd grade and talk about the whole note. What instruments can sustain on a whole note? Which ones can? Which ones can't? So it's a fun lesson to scaffold in, to think about later. Can you use it for older grades? Yes. Can you have them pull out non-pitched instruments for just a second? Yes. Do it in your recorder lessons. Do it in your ukulele lessons. Do it in your whatever. And have them pull out those instruments so they're getting more variety and exploring more in general. Okay, I hope this gave you some ideas on how you can use non-pitched just more frequently. I'm going to put that link to the lesson about Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick. And I'm going to go back and remember that I'm going to put a link to this. It's called a clave companion, so that they're not trying to hold on to the claves and make that sound, but if they hold the bun of the hot dog, you get a nice clicking sound that's a little bit easier. I'll put that on the links page too. As always, if you have questions, shoot me a message. But if not, I'll see you all next Monday for another Musical Mondays video. Thanks for coming along, everyone. Bye.